records. Tonight's turning out even colder than last night, with temperatures down to minus 13 centigrade. That's 9 degrees Fahrenheit just 4 hours ago in the Midlands. More snow's forecast tomorrow. The temperature didn't rise above freezing today anywhere in Britain. There was snow from Scotland to the Scilly Isles, with the heaviest falls in Essex and Kent. Central London and Cardiff had their coldest days on record. South and West Yorkshire, their coldest January day.
The cold air and snow blowing out of Russia are covering all northern Europe. Switzerland today recorded its lowest temperature ever, minus 41.8 Celsius, in a mountain village near the French border. Czechoslovakia has had dozens of cases of frostbite. Poland has had 3 frozen to death. Avalanches have brought reported Soviet deaths in the cold spell up to 77. Leningrad was its coldest since records started in 1743. The frozen port was shown at the beginning of the main news on Soviet television this evening, with pictures showing work going on nearly as usual. The Soviet news agency TASS said there'd never before been such low temperatures for several days running. The temperatures touched bottom at 1 degree lower than the one shown here. That's equivalent to more than 60 degrees Fahrenheit of frost. We've 4 reports on the big freeze in Britain, starting in the south.
The way home from work tonight was slow, and for many carried out on dangerous roads, once more starting to get covered up by fresh falls of snow. The worst trouble spots were again said to be in Kent and Essex, which have been taking the brunt of the icy blasts of air from Northern Europe and the Soviet Union. Those hoping to get home by train had to endure delays on freezing mainline stations. Much of Kent had woken up to snow 2.5 feet deep. Villages were cut off, and on the exposed Isle of Sheppey, snow had drifted up to 20 feet. Rail services from the Medway Towns area were badly disrupted, and hundreds of passengers had been stranded for up to 10 hours till their trains were dug out of drifts. Road traffic had just as many problems. At one stage overnight, most of Kent's roads were blocked, and when they were cleared during the day, serious jams developed. Creeks and inlets along the Thames estuary froze up, leaving boats trapped in ice. And frozen blocks could be seen as much as half a mile out in the water between the Kent and Essex shores. The centre of London, though always several degrees warmer than its surroundings, kept its covering of snow throughout the day. The morning temperature was minus 8 degrees centigrade. There'd been nothing like it since the records were started in 1940. Even the southwest had low temperatures and considerable falls of snow. There, the AA said a third of their calls were from motorists who were simply unprepared for the cold snap. The coastal towns of West Cornwall, like Penzance, were shivering in the high winds, which swept drifting snow inland and blocked many roads.
Worst hit in East Anglia was Essex, where 3 feet of snow brought with it the coldest temperatures this century. Householders pushed up demand for gas in the county to an all-time record. Southend had the look of a Siberian outpost, where workers had walked up to 6 miles to their offices, and some even took to their skis because public transport had shut down. It was a bleak message on the railways for commuters, who arrived to find their trains frozen into the sidings. The main London line was not operating because of overhead power problems, and tonight there's a reduced service on all routes. In Suffolk, the snow clearing programme is already under threat, with the council warning they'll not be able to cope beyond the end of the week if the snow continues to fall. Motorists faced long delays, but with no serious accidents, just some ending up in the ditch.
At Glasgow Airport, snowplows were in use throughout the day to clear more than 10 inches of snow, and the London Shuttle and other services were badly disrupted. As the day wore on, city centre streets in Glasgow and Edinburgh became more treacherous, while temperatures rose to a maximum of minus 3 degrees Celsius. Traffic was reduced to a standstill throughout central Scotland as it saw its worst weather conditions in 8 years. Outlying housing estates were particularly badly affected, with some people taking 2 to 3 hours to reach work in the city centres. Motoring organisations were working flat out to answer more than 1,500 call-outs for help before lunchtime. Hundreds of secondary schools were closed for the day, with a devastating effect on pupils preparing for mock O-level examinations.
Forecasters at the London Weather Centre have been warning of a cold spell ever since last week. It's all caused by a build-up of bitterly cold weather in the extreme northeast of Europe. Twin high-pressure areas over Scandinavia and twin lows over the Balkans and Italy together generate a powerful easterly wind which shoots the freezing air onto the British Isles. And the Arctic conditions of 25 winters ago could be repeated and even surpassed, with the freezing weather lingering at least until the end of the week. The resulting cold's been breaking records left, right and centre. This thermometer on the roof of the London Weather Centre has registered no higher than -5 degrees centigrade. That makes today the coldest day in central London this century. Besides London, Sheffield also had its coldest day this century, never warmer than -6. Manchester was its coldest for 30 years, and so was Cardiff. The coldest place in Britain was Stansted Airport. It never got above -8 there. The forecasters warn of more snow to come. Once established, they say, cold air is so heavy, it's difficult for warmer air to blow it away. Charles Hodson, News at 10 at the London Weather Centre.
A 6-day-old baby boy found abandoned in a telephone box during the freezing night.
Based on estimates of extra fuel,
This is the News at 1 from ITN with Leonard Parkin.
Hello, good afternoon. The freeze and the snow are getting worse, and the forecasters say there's no sign of a let-up. Heavy snow is spreading fast across the whole country. Towns and villages are cut off, schools have been closed, workers sent home, travelling's a nightmare. Reports from around the country in a moment. And we're looking at the plight of some of London's homeless who spent the night in the open in temperatures as low as -8. The Ulster Democratic Unionist MP, Peter Robinson, was delayed by snow and icy roads as he travelled to Dublin, where he's pleading not guilty to 11 charges arising from the loyalist cross-border demonstration in the village of Clontibret last August. And today's other stories: the Alliance looks to the general election. The two leaders are here in the studio. The man with a message on AIDS for drug addicts and prostitutes. And another Atlantic challenge for Richard Branson in a hot air balloon as big as a jumbo jet. Britain's freezing again, worse than yesterday. The worst for 40 years, and there's no break in sight. Towns and villages are cut off, schools closed, travel's chaotic. Last night saw a record burn to beat the big freeze as people across the country turned up the heating. The Central Electricity Generating Board said it was like an extra 2 million one-bar fires being turned on. The Gas Board said their demand was up by 6 times, and everyone's being told to economise. The weathermen say there's no change in sight. The heaviest snow again fell in the east, but it's spreading rapidly across the whole country. 2 inches in Kent and Essex, but Glasgow had the worst of it with 6 inches of snow overnight. Nowhere did temperatures rise above -5. Huntingdon was one of the coldest with -14, and if you add the wind chill factor, that's what it actually feels like when you're outside. The real temperature today could plummet to -20. Berwick is one of the many towns completely cut off. An RAF rescue helicopter has battled through blizzards to carry a pregnant woman, a boy with a broken leg and a woman injured in a road accident to hospital in Newcastle. In the southeast, commuters have been making the best of it, but roads are blocked and all public transport is disrupted or at a complete standstill. The police say stay at home unless you really have to travel. In East Anglia, it's another picture of chaos. Norwich itself is almost cut off from the outside world, and over 300 schools in the region have closed. We have 2 reports, the first from Scotland, where the Siberian conditions have brought some of the worst chaos this winter.
Scotland today braced itself for its second day of cold weather chaos. Police are advising motorists to stay at home unless their journey is absolutely essential. Hotels in Edinburgh and Glasgow are doing a roaring trade as people check in after work rather than risking the journey home. 70% of schools in Glasgow are shut, and in the Edinburgh area, 21,000 secondary school children were sent home as heating systems broke down. In industry, production is down as workers struggle to make it to their factories. Remote towns and villages are finding communications difficult. East Kilbride in Lanarkshire is for the moment totally cut off from the outside world. Edinburgh Airport has been closed all day. A spokesman said they were trying to clear the runway but were fighting a losing battle. Rail services too have been badly hit. Scotland is virtually cut off from the south, with trains being stopped at Carlisle. But amidst the chaos, there's always someone who'll make the best of things.
In the southeast, conditions worsened overnight. In Kent, another 8 inches of snow fell, and it's still snowing. Hundreds of schools throughout the region are closed, and it's thought they won't reopen until next week at the earliest. Milk deliveries got through to most parts this morning, but there are shortages in the shops of bread and fresh fruit and vegetables. Traffic has been moving slowly, and there's been a spate of minor accidents. On the M20, a convoy of drivers actually crossed the central...
That's the blunt warning from police in Kent, and it just about sums up the state of the weather throughout Britain. There's snow everywhere, and it's drifting in the high winds. Vehicles are trapped, it's still freezing, and it's going to be with us for some time yet. We'll have reports from around the country in a moment. Power supplies are stretched, the industry's going flat out to keep people warm. But what if they can't pay? A question I'll be putting to the Deputy Chairman of the Electricity Council. In other stories, Terry Waite warns all. It's day 3. It's still snowing, and it's still freezing everywhere. More people have died from the cold, and the winds are getting stronger, whipping up towering snowdrifts and chilling the bitter temperatures dangerously. Police are warning people in many areas not to leave home except for a life or death trip. On the West Yorkshire Greater Manchester border, about 1,000 vehicles have been trapped by the closure of the M62. And in Northumberland, another 1,000 people have sought shelter after being stranded on the A1. There's snow everywhere, but the main sweep has now reached the west, and the strong winds are driving the blizzard southwards. The outlook is still grim in the south, a little brighter in the north, and no let-up expected before the weekend. We've a series of reports from around the country, starting in the south, which is the worst-hit area.
The last supplies of bread and milk were made on the Lizard Peninsula 4 days ago. Since then, all the scattered villages have been cut off. This area of Cornwall is famed for its dairy herds. Today, they're all behind closed doors, their milk uncollectible. By this morning, most village shops had run out of fresh food. And with the Navy and Air Force rescue helicopters at full stretch elsewhere, the Devon and Cornwall police were called in. It took them some time to get the ice off their own helicopter, but once airborne, they began the first milk run, delivering 16 crates of bottles to the beleaguered villages of Mullion. Later, the police brought in fresh supplies of bread. Overnight snow brought down power lines, and many communities are now without power for heating. There are no gas supplies today.